This is a little bit newer for us, and it's always a test every time I start it.
Even if you think you have technology figured out, you kind of get a curveball.
Oh, dude. Yeah, even at this level. Well, I always have Julius taking care of it for me, so it's kind of, you know, it's not the same. We'll definitely have to get back into the studio together when you're here. You're used to that studio life, so you know what that's all about.
Well, it's a good time. It's a good time.
It's fun. You miss it?
Oh, I do. So we got a little crazy back in the day, but they actually had to put what was called the Wilkinson rule into effect because we would actually take some scotch with us and talk on live radio with finances, and it was fun. We never always did generalities, but I missed the entire atmosphere of just doing it live.
Yeah. So what were some of the things you were talking on radio for the most part?
So what we really focused on, and the radio show is called Money Belt Radio. It's still in existence in the Four Corners area, but we really talked about finances on a geopolitical spectrum. So we took it from, a nation, actually a world view, to a nation view, to a state view, city view, town view. And we broke down these massive amounts of numbers that, politicians throw our way, like, $18 million to figure out how shrimp mate. That's a real thing. So we would actually break that down and say, did you know it just cost you $3.96 to figure this out in your spending? And it was really getting focused on following the trail of money instead of the trail of words in politics, because it doesn't matter what side you're on the political spectrum. There's what they say, and then there's what they spend their money on.
Right.
So we just wanted to expose that so people could draw their own conclusions, because you got to follow the money.
It's crazy. When you really start, I think if there's one thing that's coming out of all of this is people realizing how interconnected we are, really.
It really is. There used to be a rule when I was growing up that you weren't allowed to talk money, you weren't allowed to talk politics, and you weren't allowed to talk religion. And with social media entering into the fray, you had that first generation of, MySpace and beginning Facebook users who kept to those kind of generalities. And now when you see social media now, everything's off. I mean, we'll talk about whatever. And, it's created a big opportunity for business to collaborate. But there is a negative end to that of, sometimes we talk too much, and that bleeds into social media.
Yeah, definitely. So quick background just for everybody listening. Give us a little background. Tell us kind of what led you to where you're at in your career today.
Yeah, so again, my name is Michael Wilkinson. I started my career in the financial industry about 20 years ago at 19, and I was hired to reverse engineer loan applications. So we would figure out how we could get more people approved for cars, how we could get more people approved for houses, and really broke down the algorithms of when they got paid, how they got their bonuses. So that way we could advertise them and get them approved on a mass level, because we knew the cycles of banks, we knew the cycles of investors. And again, just following that trail of money. I was in the car business doing that, opened up one of the first internet departments in the car business back in 1999 with a team, did very well. With 140 over invoice, showing people and dealerships how they can make a lot of money while getting a good deal and not ripping clients off. That snowballed into a business development center where we really started teaching people how to sell the right way. Instead of trying to get them to buy right now, we asked their timeline, went back to them on their terms, and really focused on what they wanted versus cramming them into a vehicle. Then it went into credit restoration, opened up a company called Credit Connections back in 2008, had a lot of luck with it, signed up tens of thousands of clients all across the nation, helping them getting their houses, their vehicles, their personal loans, and getting out of debt. Found that was not a permanent fix. So we got into debt consolidation, helped people get out of debt, found out that was a broken model, and evolved that into debt refinance. Then we got into taxes, and we got into retirement products with contract workers. So, over the course of about 20 years, have really solidified, my own reputation and my team's reputation, and knowing what they're talking about, not just in one dimension of finances, but 4 or 5 dimension of finances, which brings, a new business model to the market. And that's what we've created over the last 20 years. So it's been fun and exciting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think it is one of those things that's, I'm so glad to have you on the podcast too, is don't talk about money, right? Like when you're young, it's rude to talk about money, but it's important, just like talking about your health, in my opinion, and talking about your mental well-being is also talking about money. We live on an economic planet, whether you like it or not. And so first, in your early days, what led you down the path of finances? I know you mentioned that that one role when you're 19. Was that really what kicked it off, or were your parents really talking to you about finances? Because you're just real quick, you're really high level business smart from just getting to know you a little bit, but you're also very, very damn technical smart. And what's in between the lines of a financial document that people can't see for the most part.
Well, there's 2 things that led to where I'm at today. I was an orphan. I was actually saved by a brigadier general from human trafficking. And he realized that he needed to not just adopt me, but rehab me. So he actually, when I was 5 years old, instead of buying me baseball cards, which I asked for, I wanted Ken Griffey, I wanted all of them, Bo Jackson, they were my heroes growing up, and I wanted their baseball cards to collect them. So instead of doing that, he got me some business cards that said Mike's Pooper Scooper Business. And at 5 years old, I had an EIN number. I was in business. And by the time I was 14, I had sold that business, had the whole neighborhood on lockdown, and made about $15,000 at 14 years old selling my first business. So the entrepreneur spirit is actually what I'd like to say, pulled me out of that dark past that I had, helped me get over all the anxiety and depression that you go through, and really helped me focus my energy and my efforts. The second thing on finances, my dad was a retired brigadier general. He made a lot of money on, just his disability as well as his rank. And so he's really good at making money. He was not really good at keeping it because it was always coming in. So really what sparked my desire to get into the financial services was a chip on my shoulder. I hired a company that a lot of people are familiar with called Lexington Law to fix my credit at 19, a long time ago. They did some things. I can't really badmouth me. They did what said was in the contract, but it took 12 to 14 months, and that was just too long. So then I hired a company called Debt America. They did even less for me in the debt consolidation range, took me for about $5,000. Got into business, hired some accountants that, gave bad advice with good intentions that, I'm sure many people listening to your podcast can relate to. And then again, got hooked up with financial advisors that had their commissions in mind versus my well-being. So, all of this just accumulated within the car business of saying there's got to be a better way to treat people. Just because these different industries know a language of money that I don't know doesn't give them the right to take advantage of me. So when I opened up Credit Connections, we really went at it with the sign of being customer orientated. What was the quickest way we could fix their credit? What was the quickest way we could get them out of debt? How do we get you the biggest tax return? And how do we get you to retire 10 years sooner than what that financial advisor told you? And I'm only technical because in finances, you have to be. And the devil's in the details. So if we really don't break down how money is spent, how money is made inside of your universe, whether you're a consumer or whether you're a small business, we're not doing you justice. And if we're not doing you justice, there's no amount of money that you can pay somebody that's worth it. You might as well do it yourself. So the whole idea was being a company that somebody could actually trust to do things they could already do themselves at a price they couldn't think of doing it themselves. I mean, it's just that's how the whole idea was born, and we've been building it out ever since.
Yeah, and so you had sold the last company in New Mexico. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, and you learn a lot in the sales. We did a sale. I actually did it the way that I always wanted to. Sold it to a prior employee. Prior employee didn't take care of it quite as good as I did, and I got to see that big corporation that I built deteriorate. So even in business, you learn a lot of business, and it just goes to show me that when I advise my clients now in small businesses to sell, it's always a cash out sell. So they better have the cash on the table, or you probably ought to walk away, because the person who builds the business is as important as the person who takes over the business. And sometimes those don't align.
And you had created that company initially to sell, to exit in the beginning?
Yeah. So inside of the financial model, I knew that I didn't know enough about finances. And when you get into finances, it's a language of its own. And then you have to break down the language inside of the language. For instance, credit terminology is a lot different than debt, taxes, retirement, and income generating is a lot different than all of those ideas. So I built each one of those companies to sell them. I did sell all of those companies on time and on projection. And the whole idea was then to build a model that was holistic. We could put it all together. We didn't have to sign up people for 4 or 5 different products. And we could have the first financial holistic model built for consumers and small businesses. And that's what we did.
It's amazing. So what are you doing differently that's allowing you to build and sell these companies kind of almost on command, at will, and have success and be profiting, even during the time we're in right now?
It's quite amazing. I know there's a lot of people out there hurting because of COVID. And I would say the only thing that we do different is the details. There are a lot of people out there that say what they do, but they don't do what they say. We are certainly a company that does what it says, and we say what we do. And so at the end of the day, what we want to make sure our clients are prepared for is death, divorce, and disaster. And I hate to be the doom of gloom here, or the gloom of doom, however you want to say it. I'm a little dyslexic with words. But at the end of the day, if you don't prepare yourself for the worst, chances are you're going to lose the best. Climaxes happen in movies and books. It happens in your business, in your personal life. And if you don't prepare for that plateau, or if you don't plan for that death, divorce, or disaster, well, the one thing that you're not expecting will come up to bite you in the rear end. And that's what we try to prepare our clients for. Is your credit where it should be? Are your books where it should be? Is your debt to income in line? And we need to make sure you're ready to go before you need to be ready to go, because the early bird truly does get the worm when it comes to finances.
This is a little side, but this is so on my mind. I think you're the right person to ask this question of, we're in Colorado, right? You're in the Springs. I'm in Denver, got Fort Collins, and in a bunch of cities in between. What does someone realistically need to be making in Colorado to have a life that is comfortable, at least?
I really think that question varies for everybody. I'm a very professionally extroverted person, but personally, I'm very introverted. So to make a easy question complicated, I like to break it up into 3 categories. You have your younger group, and they tend to be more social. Independence isn't as big of a deal. They're okay with living for free rent or partial rent or whatever the living situation will do. And I have a lot of people who want to move to Colorado Springs and ask me that same question. So when I'm advising them professionally, I say, look, if you're in Kansas and you're making $40,000 a year, we've got to account for inflation in Colorado Springs. So you need to be making about $60,000 a year, $20,000 a year more to cover cost of expenses and taxes inside of Colorado Springs because of, the climate that we're in. So I would say for a single social person that doesn't care or doesn't mind for a multi-living situation, you really need to be making between 40 to 60 to be comfortable. And that's working a job, being independent, not burning yourself out. That seems to be the median income where people are comfortable. If you're a truly independent person, you're ready to grow your assets, you like to live alone, you don't mind being social, but you really like your space inside of your own home. I really like to say you want to be about 60 to 80, just because the cost of living will eat up almost 1/3 of that. And that's even if you're renting or buying. And then, of course, for your families, which this is a tough one for a lot of families, it's very, very hard to sustain in Colorado Springs, Denver, any of the places that are booming if you're not making anywhere from 80 to 120 grand, depending on how many dependents you have. So although the climate is good for growth, people need to understand the backlog that's happening. And the biggest one is the real estate market. Whether you're looking to buy or whether you're looking to rent, that should be on the forefront of your mind. And if it's not, you're not planning appropriately, and you're going to be upside down when you move here more times than not.
Yeah. It's very, very fascinating, very complicated. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it either. It's an uncomfortable topic. And you hear also the average, even someone who's making 100 grand or 40 grand, the average person doesn't have $500 in case of an emergency even, so.
Well, and that's one thing in America. One thing we try to get people to focus on is their own money, quit worrying about others. We have an association called Protecting Your Poverty. All it does is educate people on where they could save money that they don't understand. Driving around at 15% on a vehicle when you could be 2%, that's $200 a month. So if people really look inward, if you're making over 40 and depending on your circumstances, there's a lot of dead money out there that you can find just by itemizing your bank account, which is boring, but effective.
Yeah, definitely. I think also do you think people should be more focused? Let's take the younger generation, because Colorado's a young state for the most part. Denver, especially. Denver's a pretty young group of people. Should we be more focused on trying to find ways to grow and expand our income, or should we put the emphasis on that, or should the emphasis be purely on saving and conserving and all that?
So I'm a growth guy. I believe you can't help others until you put the oxygen mask on yourself, just like the flight attendants say. And the way that I like to advise my clients is a very simple question, but it smacks you in the face pretty hard. Who can you count on to take care of you when you're 85 years old? If you live that long, who's going to take care of you? And you can't answer that question because you don't know if your favorite people are going to be around, or your relatives, or, whatever. You just truly can't count on anybody but yourself to take care of yourself at the end of the day. So I try to prepare people for themselves first. And the only way to do that is to grow. It's very scary to multiply your income times 50 years and find out how much money you're projected to make and spend and don't have a plan to save any of it. So it's the first thing we like to point out. But especially for the younger generation, especially up there in Denver, I would get into very safe, conservative growth patterns. Nothing where you're chasing huge interest rates or huge investments. And the reason is because of your age. You have the rest of your life to make an unlimited amount of money in the United States of America, at least. So it really comes down to who has the best plan of action, and the turtle really wins the race. The person who starts their conservative plan at 20 is not the person who has to join into a risky plan at 40. So the best thing that you can do is hook up with a professional that really wants to plan out a conservative platform at first. Once your conservative platform should consist of a great credit score. If you're not dealing with a professional that talks to you about your credit score, you might be dealing with a good professional, but he's one-dimensional.
And by professional, you mean like a financial advisor?
Yeah, a financial advisor. And there's lots of financial advisors that become experts in credit and debt and taxes. Why? Because they want to be better for their clients. So if you have a financial advisor who's one-dimensional, that means he's probably handling his finances in one dimension. And that's not the financial advisor I want, because the scary statistic is 95% of all Americans will not retire with $50,000 to their name. So at 65 years old, 95% of the people have 50 grand or less to retire with. That goes for professional athletes. It goes for millionaires. It goes for young, old. It goes for every color across the spectrum, every race, every religion. It's unbiased. So in my mind, the only thing we have to do is formulate a plan that allows me to be self-sufficient. I need more than 50 grand at 50. And that's the financial advisor I want. You need somebody who knows credit, debt, taxes, and retirement to pull that off.
Yeah, lots to break down there. So one thing you did hit on, not to go on too much of a bunny trail, but is credit score. And it's very interesting because people I know who are, have $100 million net worth, 150, couple $10 million net worth, across the board, a lot of them don't even emphasize credit score. Okay. So what is the reason for you emphasizing credit score versus a lot of these very wealthy people don't even really care what their credit score is?
So you're dealing with a generational gap. So when we're talking about, we'll say the baby boomers and before, they really didn't deal with credit cards on a large scale like we do today. It was very conservative back then. So there's really no education and there's no courses to be taught on credit. But let's just give you an example of what our nation's built off. Our nation has a bond rating of A++ right now. And if it were to sink to A+ or A, our interest rates on all of our loans would go up like other countries. So that our credit rating on our bonds, which is our social security numbers, is what makes this nation great. It's actually the credit of our lifetime earnings that our country gambles with. Okay. So when you take a look at our nation is actually built off of debt. So to teach a cash system in a debt system is counterproductive. If you're living off of cash, and I know lots of millionaires that go broke, again, even the millionaires we know today, only 5% of them are going to make it after 55, 65 years old. It's a staggering statistic. Somebody's doing something wrong with their money. So one of the things that we want to teach is good debt versus bad debt, right? In my mind, when we advise, bad debt is your home, not real estate investment, but sometimes your home. It's a money pit. You don't know what you're going to have to invest into it. Cars, vacations, sometimes student loans when you don't use those degrees. All of these can be bad debt because they've got you for a very long time in those mortgages. Okay. And that's what they are. They're a mortgage on your future earnings. Good debt is very simple. You're earning a better interest rate than what it's costing you. So when we want to take a client from somebody who's not going to retire to somebody who is, the only thing we have to teach them is how to use their credit. And on a personal level, for every $1 you make, you can access $10, give or take a dollar or two, with an A+ credit rating. On a business level, you can access $50 to $100 for every dollar that your company makes. So a good example is the small business owner who wants to come in and they want to take an SBA out for their business, $40,000. They want to take out a 7 to 14% interest rate with an SBA, jump through every hoop known to mankind to qualify for that loan when they're sitting on $90,000 of 0% credit cards under their own personal profile, right? So you're going to give up 0% for 14% just because you don't understand how the transfers work. So inside of the credit system, it gives you the largest access to funds available, as long as you do a good job, of anywhere in the world. And that's what makes our system different. We would rather focus on the 10 and let you decide what to do with the $10 than you just focusing on the one. We don't care how you spend the $10. We want you to be responsible, but that's a very fast way to grow your business. That's a very fast way to grow your finances.
So why that approach? What is the value of the debt if I'm not a business, for example? Like, why even take any debt out whatsoever?
Well, there's a lot.
Or credit, or even touch credit, like instead of just slice all my credit cards and just living off of cash.
You can live off of cash. And there's a lot of programs out there that preach that. One of my main competitors is Dave Ramsey, and I am obviously the opposite of Dave Ramsey. And I promote credit, and he would prefer that you cut up your credit cards. And the way that I look at our financial industry is, again, it is built off of credit. So let's give you an idea. The problem with using credit is nobody knows how to get a return off of investment on credit, even if you're not a business. Okay. So in other words, when I take a look at my personal credit card, I might look at it and say, okay, I've got 0% on this card for 18 months and I can access $15,000 of this money right now. Okay. So I can either go out and take out an SBA for my business, which is going to cost me 7%. It's going to cost me money to do that. Or I can use my personal or business credit, access that loan, and give benefits to all my employees across the board at 0%. Some people might say, well, why don't you wait till you have the cash in order to give those benefits? If you are in business or if you're trying to retire, it's the same way that you look at the equation. Am I going to have enough to retire? Either way, I'm in business to retire too. People are working their W-2 careers in order to retire. So all I want to do is make sure, how do I get there quicker? Do I want to take 50 years paying cash, or do I want to take 25 years using credit responsibly to get a return on investment? And the simplest version as a consumer is the auto finance. Whenever I get a client who's worth $1 million, they'll want to spend $80,000 on a new truck when they could get 0% on that $80,000 for 72 months. Well, 0% on 72 months, if they take that, their cash is in an interest bearing account that makes 7% or more. They are actually losing $36,000 in investment money by paying up front that $80,000 for a car. It's 0% money. It's free money. So inside of the interest rates that you pay, if the money that you're going to earn is greater than the money you're going to pay, why wouldn't you use your credit? And there's a sect of people who don't care. I have clients myself that still pay cash for everything and don't follow, those guidelines. But at the end of the day, I would much rather use somebody else's money at 0% than pay and liquidate $80,000 out of my account, if that makes any sense.
Right. One of my goals is to be financially retirable by the time I'm 30. I'm 26 right now, so I've got 4 years to do that. Realistic, whether it's realistic or not. What do you think someone today, 2020, given COVID, given all the changing landscapes, what does someone need financially, whether it's passive income or just set aside in a giant pot? What would someone realistically need to live from like 30 to 110, 100? We may live to be 120 now with technology, 130. It's not unreasonable the way technology is going. So it adds all these weird dynamics into the relationship of putting money aside for retirement. But I mean, realistically, what do you think that pot needs to look like?
Well, the first step is having a goal, right? So a lot of people, when they ask that question, it's hard to visualize a 10,000 foot picture. And as always with me, the answer boils down to math. What you have to do is you have to multiply your lifestyle cost per year times how many years you think you're going to live. So for me, I can usually live very comfortably at a certain price range. So can you. Everybody on this podcast can. All you've got to do is multiply that annual income times how many years you want or think to live. So if you want to if your number is $100,000 and you want to live for another 50 years, your earning potential has to be 50 times $100,000, which is a huge number. So that is your goal. Now, that doesn't mean that's the cash you have to accumulate. That is your earning power. So whether it is residual income off of passive income that you've created through businesses or products or promotions that you do, whether it's interest that you're getting off of the investments that you have, or whether it's a combination of both, you have to be able to do that multiplication and work towards that goal. And the good news is, the light at the end of the tunnel is, the 5% who actually do make that retirement goal after 65, that's all they do. And sometimes it doesn't take them very long, because we all have different ways of making money. So at the end of the day, you just need to set an income goal for yourself of what do I need to live per year. And then you need to say, okay, if I were to retire today, could I make that income for the next 50 years, 70 years? If the answer is no, you haven't hit goal.
Yeah. So first, setting a goal, assessing what your lifestyle is going to be like, and then just doing the math on it, multiplying it.
Absolutely. Again, the good thing that the government has is very good accountants, and they're very good at dictating every
they're almost a little too good sometimes.
Yeah, they're very good at it. So, I mean, if we could just predict our own math that way, I think the company would go bankrupt. They couldn't just make as much money off of us.
Yeah, right. One thing you did touch on, which I think would be good to circle back to, was kind of like financial plans. A lot of your older clients, you find, have to do something more risky to put more in the pot in a shorter amount of time. And your younger clients like me, you would advise on a longer term plan. So more, as you said, conservative. So what are the differences specifically? What are some of the vehicles and what are some of the age demographics that you would apply that to?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I'm actually not a licensed financial advisor. So everybody on here, I don't carry a tax license, an insurance license. I don't carry any of those licenses. I work inside and with those professionals and contract them. But usually when clients come to me, there's three stages. And the biggest—
Can I just add something important to that? Not to cut you off, but that's what also, in my opinion, why we're having this conversation makes you important, because most people who are giving financial advice have a very specific commission tie on the back end of it. Whereas someone like you is an agnostic. Those of you that are listening, agnostic means that the best interest of the person they're sitting in front of versus I sell hammers and you're looking for a saw, but you might need a hammer anyway. So I'm going to sell you a hammer. The difference is you have an entire tool shed to work with.
You're absolutely right. And it's why we won't carry any license. You really hit the hammer on the nail, pardon the pun. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to give unbiased advice. Even with the professionals that we reach out to, we check their pay structure. I know of, really good financial advisors that will charge you under 1% for almost every investment you've got. I know what the insurance premiums should be attached to your credit score because your car insurance and home insurance is actually tied to your credit. So when we are vetting our professionals and we get clients on board, one of the easiest ways we find our clients' money is checking the professional relationships they already have, the subscription cost or the service cost versus what they're getting, and really educating you on what you're paying for and what you're getting out of it versus what's available, even if you don't sign up for it. So the first thing I would say anybody should do before they invest any amount of money is find out where they are financially. We get a lot of people who just want to skip straight to investing. First, you have to decide what stage of your finances you are in. Are you in recovery mode? Has something bad happened to you? You might be coming into some good money and you just want to start investing right away. Typically, the problem with that strategy is you might invest and your investments might do good, but you have to pull out of those investments in the next emergency because you didn't lay the groundwork. So if you are actually in the recovery mode, you should be checking to make sure your credit score is as good as it should. Why? Because your credit score can save your investments. We had a client who got fired from his job. He was going to liquidate his 401k. We talked him out of liquidating his 401k right away because of the penalties. And we told him to live off of his credit cards and his available credit until he found a new job. 2 months later, he found a new job. He escaped all the penalties of liquidating the 401k. And it cost him $8,000 in credit card debt. It would have cost him $12,000 to take out the 401k, what he wanted just in taxes. So there's a lot of things that you should not recover or skip in the recovery stage. That is, do you have the right credit score? Is your debt to income in line? Are your taxes in the right bracket, which is a boring subject, but an important one. Those are the three questions you should answer before you go into the next stage, which is protection. Have I protected what I already have? So many times people want to build assets, but before they've protected their current asset, right? Do you have the right type of insurances if you're robbed? Again, boring. It stinks. Nobody wants to talk about those things. I don't get paid for those insurance premiums, but it does me no good to build your wealth if every 7 to 15 years when a national emergency happens, I've got to rebuild your finances. So we want to make sure that you are protected with disability. If you get hurt, if something bad happens to you, we need all that stuff in place. Then you get into the growth mode. Once you've recovered and once you've protected what you already have, then you should be taking a look at your risk level. All right, do I want to go all out and chase those big interest rates? Or do I want a more conservative path where, no, I'm not making millions, but in 20, 40 years, I'll have what I need to survive, sustain, and anything else is gravy. So the first thing that you do before you jump into any type of investment plan, are you recovering? Finish that stage. Have you protected what you already have? Finish that stage. And then when you're ready to grow, you will find true growth because even in setbacks, you've put all these security measures in place to protect what you already have.
So you see people, I mean, you see like Warren Buffett and the guy, one of the richest man in the world, and one of his biggest mottos is don't lose money. And then all of a sudden COVID happens and he dumped a lot of airline and lost money. So for you observing all of this, have you kind of changed your perspective as to where someone who's 26, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their early 40s should be hedging on those more conservative investments? Have you kind of changed your perspective on where to start putting that money?
Absolutely not, because I don't view the stock market, even if you're in blue chips, conservative at all.
Right.
It's a
So you're
slot.
not an advocate for 401k.
I am, but at the right time. So there is something called a Warren Buffett plan. And if you actually break down how he started his wealth, he started out, of course, with home ownership, which is the beginning, even though I call it a liability, not an asset. It's both, and you're lucky to break even in most markets. We are in a generous market, so we're lucky. But at the end of the day, the next thing he did was insurance. He was an insurance salesman. So he locked down all of his safety and security before he even got into the stock market. So what I tell people is to secure their credit, their debt, their taxes. That is a very conservative pathway, because you have to invest time and money into it. And if you don't, you better pay somebody to do it, because those areas of your money don't sleep. Your credit's always working for you or against you. Your debt is always working for you, against you. And you have taxes till you die, just like credit and debt. So at the end of the day, you can't ignore those problems. That is the most conservative pathway, is learning those areas first. Then you can get into the insurances. You've got to learn those, because so many times clients that are brand new to me lose their wealth because they didn't have one piece of insurance put in front of them that would have saved all their assets. The next thing is that growth. And the growth for me is not the stock market. The growth for me is midterm plans. I know other people preach against them. I really like permanent insurance plans, whole life insurance plans, not as an investment, but as a cash out option for death, divorce, and disaster. So if your plan is to get into something and get out of it in a few years, you don't have a sound financial plan. So especially for those young people, I take them through that Warren Buffett plan, tell them about the Roth IRAs, tell them about the holes in the permanents and the umbrellas. Those are the safe things that death, divorce, and disaster, well, death can touch it because it's life insurance. But again, and I don't get paid for this, those are the conservative pathways where if they're set up correctly, you can fall back on them in an emergency. Once you have all of that locked down, then you go into the stock market, 401ks, and aggressive retirement plans. And the reason is, if you set up 3 levels of defenses, you've got your credit, which you can fall back onto in an emergency, which some people can't because it's not built out. That's on a consumer and a business level. You got to have them both built out. Even if you think you'll never need it, 95% of America needs it. Okay. And then on the protection side, do you have the right insurances? I know of a church that was burnt down in my hometown. They didn't have the right insurance in place. That's $45,000 a month they've lost because they don't have a place of worship and they didn't insurance their place. So that's a big deal. So when you set up your finances the right way, when you set up your insurances the right way, you can take risk, because you can exhaust your personal finances, you can cash out your mid-level investments, and now your 401k becomes like custard last stand, right? It's the last area you have for finances. It's the last area of protection you have. You'll cash it out if you have to. Too many Americans cash out their 401k first, and that's what tanks them in the end.
Right. Even amidst all of this, even people who play the stock market start sucking all their money out. And I mean, obviously there's some industries that are just not going to return and are totally dissipated. But what were we going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say the stock market's volatile. So for me, I don't care how conservative it is. There's no company that's big enough to fail, right? So for me, I don't care if they've been around 200 years. I still expect them to fail at some point. So when I take a look at the stock market, I don't care if I've made $20,000 this week. It's funny money. The money doesn't exist. It's in a transfer. So if that money isn't there at the exact time that I want to retire, and how many people do you know right now that can't retire because
Many.
all their money was in one boot, and that boot was the
100%.
stock market that a one-dimensional advisor put them in. Again, not trying to separate, clients from their people, but if you're dealing with a one-dimensional advisor, be careful. There's a lot of people who can't retire right now because they were told to ignore their credit, ignore their insurance, and focus on gains.
Yeah. I'm so glad we're talking about this. I was lucky enough to seek mentorship and find wealthy individuals to study and learn from and actually understand, like Warren. I mean, we speak Warren Buffett. There's other guys who probably are as wealthy as him, but they're just not as public as he is. But the thing that
usually the smart ones,
yeah, exactly.
Plans. They're just at a beach enjoying no publicity.
100%. And there's like, it's like the millionaire next door, right? You don't even know that the guy's there. Like that's in Colorado too. There are billionaires that I know here. Nobody would know. Nobody would know. Nobody would have any clue whatsoever.
No,
but
the ones that are quietest carry the biggest stick. That's usually the phrase in finance.
It's very true. And what's interesting too is Warren Buffett. What people don't realize when everyone's all advocates about stock market, like my peers, anyone who's in their 20s are like, hey, what should I invest into in the stock market? It's like, that's how Warren Buffett got wealthy. It's like, no, it's not. He has control of the companies that he's investing into that he's taken public. That's different. That's different.
Well, it's a lot of different. And when you're taking a look at retirement, this is how I look at it. Bruce Lee, I was a big martial artist, MMA, growing up, and, pretty scrappy, but liked it. And, at the end of the day, even Bruce Lee could only take on multiple opponents for so long before he just wore out, right? And he just literally wore out of exhaustion. And when you're taking a look at your finances, you are being attacked from so many different areas of your finances. You've got subscriptions, you've got bills, you've got mortgages, you've got emergencies, you've got family, you've got favors. Eventually, you're just going to lose track of it all. And I don't know of very many people who don't unless they're paying somebody. So the key to getting wealthy is leveraging your money in a way that it works for you. And if you're handling all your bills, if you're making every decision there is when it comes to your money, eventually you're going to make a bad decision. Statistics are against you. That even goes for me. I don't even manage my own money because I don't have time to manage my own money. And at the end of the day, if I get caught in the minutia of managing my own money, I'm going to cost myself money. And so we need to be focused on what we're good at. We need to build a team, which is the real reason for my success, that we can trust. And once we can rely on that team, whether you're a consumer or whether you're a business, and that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, they're going to follow through on their word, that's where true prosperity can come in, because it allows you to thrive inside your wheelhouse, which your wheelhouse is whatever you love doing. And that is what your true financial advisors, your accountants, the people that surround you professionally, that's what they should be involved in, is how do I make sure your life is easier? And I'm a Zig Ziglar approach guy. If I help you get everything that you want in life, then you'll help me get everything I want in life. Trained me for that for many, many years. I was a good student of his. And that's how we treat everybody, whether they're a client or not, is let's just dig into your finances. Let's just give you the answers that you want. Because, I don't know what kind of listenership you have, but, one of the funniest statistics that I do in my seminars is people would rather talk about their sex life than their credit card debt. And that's an actual statistic from NADA, which is the big car sale book for used books. And it's absolutely true. People would rather talk about that orientation than, I'm in $45,000 of credit card debt. What can you do? There's not a lot of avenues for people to do that. So, what I get to do every day is relieve that pressure, show people how easy it is to lean on all the different assets available to you in the financial world. And you're either going to take that knowledge and do it yourself, or you're going to find a company that's going to help you do it.
Yeah, definitely. And in the time we have, we got to touch on this because you hit this and this totally resonated with me. Is I'm always finding more and more as I, just gain more life experience, anything the vast population of middle class is doing is likely the opposite of what you should actually be doing. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that like the home, the dream, the American dream, buy a home and you'll get wealthy. Right. And I get it both ways. Again, I'm 26. The money I make, people are like, why the heck are you paying what you do for rent? Why don't you go buy a house right now? It's, and in my opinion, it's because I'm focused on growing my income, not on mowing my lawn, fixing my sink, and whatever. Even if I have tenants who are paying rent, it's still going to cost me money. So what's your perspective on that too? It's, people get almost very offended when you talk about it as well. And you're like, dude, a home is not an investment. If you want a home for something, that's great. It's not an investment, in my opinion.
So I take a lot of heat for this as well. I'm in the financial field, so I'm going to take heat no matter what, especially because my views differ than a lot of professionals, especially on the credit side. But one thing that we always want people to understand is buckets and investments. So you're absolutely right. If I had a single high income earner coming into me and they said, hey, I want to break my lease and buy a property, the first question I would ask them is why? Now, if they said it's because I want a home, I've always wanted a home, I'm probably going to keep this, for 15 to 30 years, I'd say go for it. If they said, well, I just wanted to get the market value, appreciate the market value, and realize the market value, I might give a little bit different advice depending on your financial situation. And I give this advice a lot for single folks, folks without kids, or people that are not interested in a home. They're just, because they might be in the military, traveling all the time, and it can become a huge liability, as you've said. One hailstorm while you're deployed could bankrupt you if you don't have processes and things in place. And not everybody wants to hire a property management company. So the advice that I give for certain people, again, is specified. But a lot of the time I'll say, okay, well, what's your portfolio look like? If you do not have a real estate portfolio, I will suggest that you get one. But I might suggest that you go ahead and buy a property, lease it out, and get the appreciation, get the rent, do the maintenance while you're actually leasing yourself, and your landlord is absorbing all the depreciation. Yeah, they're getting the appreciation, but you don't know what depreciation is going to occur in the future. So they're going to absorb that. You are now offsetting your asset and your liability. And when you do that, you have a safe investment. That allows you freedom to pick up and leave when you want, hire a property management company. It allows you to realize the investment. If it grows, it allows you to buy and sell when you want. So again, the advice that I give to all of our clients is highly specified according to their desires, because you should only invest in what you desire in, because if you don't, you're going to pull out early. And if you do that, your investment is going to end in disaster almost 100% of the time, because you're miserable inside of your investment contract.
That's a tough one to break down.
It is.
For people to realize. And I'm not because again, I have friends who are real estate agents, and they do great. And there's a reason for it. But I think for people to sell it and predominantly sell it as this is gonna be your life savings and your investment, I don't buy it. And then I see my family.
You got to take a look at where it's coming from. And again, I'm not here to one of my biggest downfalls is I'm not political. So I have a lot of mortgage, a lot of real estate, financial, insurance, a lot of people who follow me and take my advice, and they don't like some of it because it costs them commissions. But when I get a banker who's pushing a loan, I understand that they get a salary, commission, or bonus off of those loans. So they are, of course, going to be biased that it's the greatest thing in the world. When I take a look at a stockbroker or a financial advisor, they are going to make money off of everything that they do. So of course, it's going to be the best. Real estate agents are no different. They make a living off of property. Very rarely have I ever met a real estate agent who says, I'm going to live here for the rest of my life. They make it a life habit of understanding the ups and downs of the market, and they have a career that they can retire with up until death. Not everybody has that luxury. So again, when you're taking financial advice, you cannot let it be one-dimensional. If you get anybody who's telling you to put all of your chips in real estate, you're going to lose. If you get anybody telling you to put all your chips in one thing, you're going to lose. It's up to you to diversify, or find somebody that's going to diversify and educate you, because all of these things, investments are volatile. That's why they're called investments. And you better do your homework, or I hate to say it or sound like an infomercial. or you got to pay somebody to do your homework for you. You're making life decisions that can affect you the rest of your life.
What's your perspective on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies?
So I never liked the cryptocurrencies because of the human trafficking aspect of it. I usually draw the line there just because of my background. Cryptocurrencies were never going to, in my opinion, take off unless they got the backing of Goldman Sachs, Chase, and banks like that. They are making their own cryptocurrencies. I do think it'll eventually become a currency of the future. We've seen a huge downfall in the usage of cash just because of the pandemic. So a lot less people are using cash. We're seeing a lot more fraud that's coming in place because of credit cards and debit cards. So there eventually will be a digital solution. I don't think it'll be the entire breakdown of Bitcoin, but you're going to see something interesting happen if digital currency does come to fruition in the next decade. You will see companies like Bitcoin disappear like Alltel with cell phones. Once the big boys, and the big boys are the big banks, get involved, they will either bleed out the other companies, slowly taking their market share, or they will eventually buy them up when they can get a short sell discounted price. So, that's the advice I've given on crypto ever since its rage a few years ago when everybody was buying up like hotcakes. I was not. I was telling everybody, you don't buy until Goldman Sachs gets in. Once Goldman Sachs gets in, you won't make as much money, but it'll be a lot safer. And that's just where I go with crypto, because it is the future, but right now it's too volatile.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fast. People are, again, that's one people get very emotionally tied to as well in a lot of different ways.
Well, you get people who are making millions off of it. And again, you can, at one point in time, my parents made a living off Beanie Babies, right? Beanie Babies were the biggest thing. And we were making good money off Beanie Babies. I mean, everybody wanted the Beanie Babies. And I'm not comparing real estate or crypto or any of that to Beanie Babies. What I am saying is you can make a lot of money making anything a profession if you're passionate about it. And that passion bleeds into other things, which is impulse buying. So you really have to take a hard look at the person you're talking to. And if they are one-dimensional and all they are is about crypto, I have lots of clients that are in crypto, and I don't care. I don't berate them for, investing into crypto. It's their money. They can do what they want. But at the end of the day, if they get a one-dimensional advisor, that is the scariest thing in your life, because their emotion becomes contagious. I mean, we've all ran into that great salesperson who can sell ice to Eskimo. And at the end of the day, they will always make money off of it because that's what they do for a living. You do not do that for a living, so better be very careful.
Yeah. So real quick before we wrap up here, I think a lot of people may be sitting here thinking, well, I make 30 grand a year, or I make 100 grand a year, maybe even anywhere in between that, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think would be pretty average for a Coloradoan, between 30 and 100K. At what point should someone hire someone like you, hire an advisor who is agnostic? First off, I think that's the right way to go. I think even Tony Robbins in his book Unshakable recommends agnostic advisors. And a lot of the other folks out there who have built wealth, what should they do? Like, if they're sitting here thinking like, I got no money to invest into an advisor, what should they do?
The first thing is just start with education, right? We can't change our stars unless we know the constellations. I mean, it's corny, but it's true. So, you go back to details. You really have to focus the air mask on you. First, it starts with income, right? Credit, debt, taxes doesn't mean anything if you're not earning income. And so if you're not making the amount of income that you want to make, you actually have to sit down and find out what you could be passionate about to make that income. Once you've secured funds, and you have secured funds, I pay somebody immediately, but I'm not everybody else. I find the person who's going to fill that need. I interview them. I do my due diligence and check references. And if they pan out, I give them a shot, and I give them 90 days. And they better have the money back guarantees. They better have all the things in place to say, hey, if I can't trust you, I can break out of this. There's no big contracts, no big amounts. I mean, it's easy to get away from you, is basically what I'm saying. It's easy to get my money back if you didn't do what you said you were going to do. But the answer to the question is if you do not have, I would say, anywhere from 5 to 10 hours a month, depending on if you're a consumer or a business owner, to operate with your own finances. Your books aren't up to date. You're not getting the best tax return. Your credit scores are down. You need to hire somebody pretty quickly, because money doesn't sleep. I mean, you can sleep all you want. You can procrastinate all you want. All of these things in your life are working for you or against you right now. And there are companies and professionals out there, I mean, even yourself and your marketing company, that can show people how to grow their businesses. And so at that point, it just comes down to good math and good accountability. If you can project what you want for your future, if you can say, all right, in 6 months, I want to have a 780 credit score. I want $10,000 of my debt paid off. I want to, learn what I need to learn about my taxes so I can not pay the government. I can get a tax return, which is possible for everybody in this country. And I want to learn how to retire quickly. These are all questions you must ask yourself right away. And you're either going to decide to put, and it's the 10,000 hour rule, right? To become an expert at anything, you've got to spend 10,000 hours of your own time into it over the course of your lifetime to become an expert. So you can take the rest of your life to do that 10,000 hours, which a lot of my clients do, or you can take a few years to do that 10,000 hours like I did and learn as much as I could about the financial industry as possible. That is the difference between paying somebody and not paying somebody. If you are a do-it-yourself person, we will give you the resources, we'll give you the names, we'll give you the institutions, we will give you anything you need to help yourself recover, stabilize, and protect, or grow your business or personal finances. If you don't want to do it yourself, you don't want to commit to becoming a professional of your own finances, which you're going to have them for the rest of your life anyways, even if it's not me, do your due diligence and find somebody. You will thank yourself, because it'll pay for itself in the end if they're doing their job.
So either learn it yourself or invest. But what about what about in the interim? I mean, most people are literally living paycheck to paycheck. So how do they navigate that at that point?
The biggest thing, and it's hard to overcome with this one, we have an organization again called Protecting Your Poverty. And the reason it's called Protecting Your Poverty is because sometimes we can't get out of our own way. I came from rags to riches. I was homeless. I've got every excuse in the book to have an excuse, is what I like to tell people in seminars. But at the end of the day, we truly can change our own stores. We can be inspirational. We can be coaches. We can be guiders. We can be coaches. I mean, we can be whatever we want to be, as long as we can find passion and link up with other people that we have passion. So for those people that are barely scraping by, the first thing that you have to do, and we've said it over and over, is have a goal. If your goal is, okay, I just need $5,000 extra a month and I'll have some wiggle room, there are plenty of side gigs out there, mine excluding mine, where you can make $5,000 extra. Will it hurt? Probably. Will you have to lose sleep? Probably. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't ask anybody to do something I haven't already done. I have bags under my eyes for a reason. And at the end of the day, if I'm not happy with where I am at financially, the only place to start is me. Do I have to find a new job? Do I got to find a new referring partner? Do I got to make another connection? That is the foundation of hope. Once you have that hope, that is the foundation for action. And once you create action in your life, you become unstoppable.
I love it. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Anything else you want to touch on or share as we're wrapping up here?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on your podcast. I want to thank for all the listeners that are tuning in live and will listen to it afterwards. The biggest thing that I can give as financial advice is don't take any financial advice without researching it. Even the things that I talk about live, do your due diligence on recordings, do your due diligence. Don't just take somebody's advice, because even though it worked for them, it may not work for your personality or your universe that you've created in your life. So at the end of the day, when it comes to money, always check up on yourself, always be accountable to yourself. And that is the beginning of you becoming financially independent. So thank you for having me on your show, and I'd love to be back sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all the insights. And how can people find you, get into contact with you? Because we got to get you out on. So you're like the man behind the curtain. You're the one with the silence. You're the one with the silent stick. So I appreciate you even being on the radio and everything. just coming and speaking to us during this time, but how can people get in contact with you now?
The best way is just to go to our website, www.endeavorconsultinginc.com. Again, that's endeavorconsultinginc.com. You can view, again, we're a financial services company, so we can't, put everything up there because we're regulated, just like licensed professionals in advertising. But you can submit your contact information, just a phone number, email address, and whatever questions you have. And again, we break clients down into two different services. We have free services. Look, we don't want to charge you for the education. If you're totally willing to, follow our processes, give our website a try, ask us our questions or ask us any questions that you have, and put our professionals to the test. They will step up to the plate. They have great connections with lending institutions, credit card institutions. I mean, we're involved with a lot of different things, both here locally in Colorado and Denver, Colorado Springs and Denver, as well as having clients in 22 different states. So we have a very good grip on who you need to see to relieve a financial situation if you have one right now, or one coming in the future. So go to endeavorconsultinginc.com, check us out, put us to the test, and see if you like some of the things we're telling you.
Yeah. And guys, if you're feeling overwhelmed about everything, again, this is where education comes in too. And so basically, Mike has the information that you need. He's accumulated it over years and years, put those 10,000 hours in. So check that out. Make sure, again, listening, go subscribe all the podcast apps wherever you're listening. Make sure you leave a review.